Welcome to this video presentation of mission factors. After this presentation, you should be able to explain the term mission factors, difference between the use of the three mission factors, recall how the level of each mission factors are decided, recall how the mission factors inflict on the reimbursement rates, and list other factors that also inflicts on the reimbursement rates. Mission factors are multipliers applied to the reimbursement rate for major equipment and self-sustainment to compensate the troop of police contributors for specific conditions prevailing in the area of responsibilities that causes unusual wear and tears, shorter life of equipment, increased maintenance costs, and/or risk of damage to and loss of the equipment. We have three mission factors, all detailed described in the CV Manual, Chapter 7. Extreme environmental condition factor, logistics and road conditions factor, and hostile action or forced abandonment factor. The extreme environmental condition factor should not exceed 5% of the wet lease or dry lease rate and the self-sustainment rate. The factor taking into account elements such as extreme mountainous, climate or coastal conditions. The logistics and road conditions factor should not exceed 5% of the wet lease or dry lease rate and the self-sustainment rate. The factor takes into account elements such as the size of the area of responsibility, the length of the logistics chain, road conditions, and the non-availability of commercial facilities for repair and support facilities. The hostile action or forced abandonment factor should not exceed 6% of the self-sustainment rate and half of the estimated monthly maintenance rate. The factor is meant to compensate for the cost of losses borne by the troop of police contributors for minor equipment, spare parts, and consumables due to hostile action or forced abandonment. All these three factors are built up as decisions sheet. Within each factor, there are a lot of questions with pre-made alternatives of answers. All answers have a pre-given points, and by following the instructions and choosing the answer that fits best to the situation in the mission, you will end up with a number that will be the new mission factor. It's easy to follow each decision sheet and filling in the best suitable answer. As mentioned, the mission factors cannot exceed 5% or 6% for the hostile action factor and are applied to both the major equipment and the self-sustainment reimbursement rates. You will find the mission factors listed in the Memorandum of Understanding, both in Annex B, the major equipment, and in Annex C, the self-sustainment. The slide shows a copy of an Annex B to the Memorandum of Understanding. Since the Memorandum of Understanding is a signed and printed document, the document will not be updated when or if the mission factors changes. However, the reimbursement system will always use the last updated factor. The United Nations is responsible for determining each mission factor in all missions. It is done as a technical survey conducted by the Department of Peace Operations. All missions factors should be reviewed once every 3 years. The same factors apply to a given geographical area, and therefore it may be different factors within one mission. The factors may also be changed temporarily in response to sudden events, for example, natural disasters. The troop of police contributors may request a review of the existing factors, but remember, the new revised factor can then be higher or lower than the existing one. All three mission factors applies to the self-sustainment rate and dry and wet lease rate of major equipment, except the hostile action or forced abandonment factor On major equipment, it is only applied on half the maintenance rate. Why are these mission factors like this? The mission factors and everything else in the CV manual is decided by the member states by consensus only and not by the Secretariat. We have in earlier presentations looked at other factors. The no-fault incident factor applies on the major equipment release rate for compensate for incident resulting from an accidental occurrence or negligent conduct. The incremental transportation factor applies on the maintenance rate for compensate of the transportation of spare parts and consumables for major equipment items. Environmental enhancement factor applies on tentage, accommodation, and warehouses and equipment storage that has additional features with the designed to improve the heating and the cooling effectiveness and efficiency of the facility. 5% increase. Temporary operation base premium reimbursement applies on 5 specific self-sustainment categories: catering, communication, explosive ordnance disposal, field defense stores, and tentage, under specific conditions. 5% increase per category. The Peacekeeping Capability Readiness System reimbursement applies to the maintenance rate for the equipment that is stored, packed, and ready for deployment, 25% of the maintenance rate. Calculating the mission factors into the major equipment reimbursement rate. The wet lease rate includes factors are as followed. Wet lease rate plus the wet lease rate multiplied with the environmental factor plus the wet lease rate multiplied with the logistic and road factor plus half the maintenance rate multiplied with the hostile action or forced abandonment factor plus the maintenance rate multiplied with the incremental transportation factor. The slide shows the calculations in detail using the earlier example of a trailer light cargo and some exercise-only factors. Calculating the mission factors into the self-sustainment reimbursement rates are much easier. The self-sustainment rate included factors are as follow. The monthly rate plus the monthly rate multiplied with the sum of the environmental factor, the logistics and road factor, and the hostile action or the forced abandonment factor. The slide shows the calculations in detail using the self-sustainment category catering and some exercise-only factors. We have in this presentation introduced you to the mission factors and all its specialities. The extreme environmental conditions factor, the logistics and road conditions factor, the hostile action or forced abandonment factor, how to calculate or create a mission factor, who is responsible for decide the different factors. We have also looked at other reimbursement factors. And finally, how to calculate the factors into both the major equipment rate and the self-sustainment rate. Key takeaway: the United Nations is responsible for determining each mission factors in all the missions and for conducting a technical survey every 3 years for updating the factors. Thank you for following the presentation.